Your ex has a new partner and you're going through the divorce or de facto separation process, and you're wondering, does this change anything when it comes to property, custody, or child support? So in this episode today, Mum and I are going to be talking about an emotionally charged topic that hits a lot of people, is when your ex or yourself repartners and how it can or can't affect their property settlement, child support, or custody arrangements or spousal. So today we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic, but an important one because life does go on. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hello, everyone. It's a juicy topic today, isn't it?
It is. And look, we get little questions emailed to us throughout the year touching on bits of these, and then I figured we could put it all together into one topic because I don't want people to think that, I want them to understand, how it can affect your family law case. Because I think there'll be some people out there who are holding back having a relationship,
Yes.
as well as being hyper-focused on their ex's new relationship. And some of this stuff can be super unhealthy for people. So this is a way for us to help you get unstuck if you're in any of these situations. But before we get started, just a reminder, Mum is not your lawyer. I am not a lawyer. Please go and get independent legal advice. This is just a general discussion around repartnering in divorce and de facto separation. There may be discussions of family violence, so if you feel triggered by that, please call 13 11 14 Lifeline in Australia, or please call 1-800-RESPECT if you feel like you've been experiencing any family violence. And if you are, of course, in an emergency, please call 000 in Australia.
Hello, I'm Laura, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
Now, I figured, Mum, because there will be some people listening to this who don't have kids, we're going to cover the property settlement stuff first and then move into the kids stuff second.
Okay.
So that, those people that don't have kids don't have to sit here and listen to all that first. So let's talk about...
But they might need it if their new partner in the future has children. So
That's true. So, Mum, does your ex having a new partner affect your property settlement?
No, usually it does not. Okay, the court's going to divide the property between the two of you. And if you're thinking maybe that the new person's entitled to some of the funds straight away, they're not usually straight away. So, if you're going through property settlement, then you're working on the assets of each of you at the time that you're going through the property settlement, not the time you're separated, the time you're going through the property settlement.
Okay, so that's really important to note. So you're talking about going through the assets as of the time that you are doing the negotiations and doing the settlement, because some people have been separated for years.
I know. There's a famous case of Woodland and Todd, WWODLAND and TODD. And that was the case where the court reiterated that the property has to be on the day that they consider it or on the day that you guys divide it up. So stuff that you've got since separation all comes into the pool. And if you own something with someone else, your share comes into the property pool for division.
Okay, so we've got people who've been separated for a long time. They then repartnered and they've bought a house with their new partner.
Yep.
How do they know what part of the house they're entitled to in the property pool?
Well, the house will usually have been bought in the two names, the person, your ex, and the new person. So if it's, for instance, tenants in common 50-50 or joint tenants 50-50, then it's half that value that is available to your ex on top of the other assets that you've got.
So that's for someone who's repartnered and they've been together for a long time, and that's why it's really important, I guess, to get your property settlement sorted sooner and don't let it drag on forever.
You'd be surprised how quickly people leap into another house with sales,
What about short term? What if someone's had a secret partner for years and you're getting separated from your ex right now and you find out, holy moly, my ex has been dating someone for the last 4 years without telling me? That may be the reason for the breakup. Does that affect the property settlement?
No, because if you're bringing an application against your ex, you will bring the whole property settlement just as you would normally get it, and that other person doesn't count. Where it can get sticky, and there have been some cases, And I assume it's because you send your ex away or they leave. The person they've been in a de facto relationship, I guess, during the marriage has them full time for a while, and then that breaks down because, it's not so much fun. And so then you do have circumstances where both the wife or the first partner and the second partner are both bringing a claim against your ex.
Right. So sometimes, so it is a problem if they both could go. So you can be married and de facto at the same time.
Yes, and there's speculation to say you can be married and de facto to several people at the same time. But the court has definitely said you can be married and living at home with no sign of any chinks in the armour and have a completely other secret life somewhere else, or even someone that you visit 2 nights a week or 3 nights a week or whatever. So, yes.
Someone did ask us recently, do they have to be living together to be de facto?
No.
What's the definition of de facto in family law in Australia?
In family law in Australia, the definition of de facto is 2 people living together on a genuine domestic basis. I think I've got that right. It's very modern, isn't it? So they look at them like, are they mingling their finances? You know, they've had to make it, you have to be de facto for 2 years to have a claim on property settlement. Otherwise, that could be ridiculous. But yes, so the law is kind of still developing around those things. But you would be a very unlucky person indeed to have both your wife and your ex filing against you for property settlement, and the court joins them up and makes it, because it's got the same respondent, then they work out. But they do work it out, contributions, future needs, all of those things.
All the same.
Yeah.
Okay. What about if you find out your ex has got a new partner and they're using the joint income, the joint money, your joint funds, the asset pool that you are going to be separating in property settlement to buy their new partner an engagement ring, lingerie, or expensive holidays? What if your ex is just blowing all your money on someone else?
Yes. Well, if the money existed at the time of separation, then that money gets taken into account in terms of what is really wastage. In the new Family Law Act, it talks about the behaviour of a person after separation and their impact on the assets. So that will be, it can't go in the balance sheet anymore because it's disappeared, but we'll look at it and go, that's a lot of money you've already had. It's kind of like a premature distribution of assets and, the cases that we talk about there. So that's how the court will deal with that.
Right.
But it's different if they use their income post-separation.
So if they're using the money that they earn after you break up to spend it all on their new partner, there's nothing you can really put your hand up.
Yeah, so Gollings and Scott was a case, I think it was an $8,000 engagement ring that was bought, but it was proven to have been bought from it was the husband in this case who bought it, from his income. However, I've seen a couple of sneaky attempts to use their income for extravagant things, lavishing things on their ex, and then use the money from the joint account for groceries and rent and so forth. So a little bit of an investigation needs to take place. Or in other cases, people have such a high salary, there is no need for them to be taking money from the joint account to live on.
We've heard also of stories where they're buying their new girlfriend or their new boyfriend all these fancy things, but they're not paying the mortgage, not paying bills, and making these people drown in debt. So can that be looked at in property settlement?
Yes, absolutely. And it's a form of economic abuse.
Okay. And that's in the definition of the Family Law Act for violence.
It is. Section 4AB. Yeah, very well.
Yay, I'm learning things. All right. Okay. So we've just talked about the property settlement thing. I guess when someone finds out their ex has been cheating on them, it hits you like a bull at a gate. Like it knocks you off your socks. And then it just seems so unfair that there's no comeuppance for that kind of behaviour. Why doesn't the court look at the emotional damage that an affair or someone who goes straight into a new relationship can cause?
Are you ready for a history lesson?
Yeah.
Okay. Brace yourselves. Okay.
Yeah.
So the Marriage Act, 1939, Commonwealth Marriage Act, 1939, there were grounds for divorce that included things like infidelity, family violence, desertion, like not supporting. And those things, you'll see them on old movies that they have to take photos of a person in bed with someone else so they can get a divorce. That was terrible. That was really terrible. And as a kid, I saw people go through that process and it destroyed them. The Commonwealth government really wanted to introduce no-fault divorce. And that's what the Family Law Act 1975 did. And I can say it's far better for that to happen than to go through that forensic inquiry that they used to have to do under the Matrimonial Act. Under the Marriage Act, you couldn't get a divorce unless there was one of those things. There are about 7 grounds. Whereas here, the only grounds for divorce in Australia now is separated for 12 months and no reasonable prospect of reconciliation. So that was kind of a deal that they did with the churches, because the churches didn't want to make it too easy to break a marriage with their solid vows and so forth.
So the court just doesn't care anymore, because if they did care about those kind of things, then there'd be all sorts of sneaking around, videoing and photographing, and it does sound pretty horrible. But emotionally, the toll emotionally on people, that there's nothing that the courts care about.
I think in my experience, no matter why the marriage broke down or the relationship broke down, there is a huge emotional toll. There's the loss of your hopes and dreams, even if it was just sadly growing apart. So, I think everyone feels sad about it. We know it's a minefield for people, and the court does the best they can to help people through it. We've even got dogs in most of the courts now, but you just can't be going down that route. And the court doesn't have time to do a forensic examination of people's behaviour. They have introduced a little bit of an element of behaviour, though, haven't they, in the amended Family Law Act, which just came through in June, wasn't it, this year, where they can look at family violence within the relationship. But that doesn't really involve third parties. It's just between the two of you. And have your contributions been made significantly harder or more arduous? Not even significantly, more arduous. Have they been made harder because of the behaviour of the person you were married with? And perhaps someone might think that has been made harder because they were having an affair and I didn't know they were and they were mean to me, but the court doesn't need to know why they were mean to you. You can think what had happened to you. So it's been tried. It's a big can of worms. And I think people get re-traumatised going over it and over it.
Yeah. And I do see you have to shift your mindset, I think, when you go into the family law realm, where things that people really care about in the real world, the family law courts are very, I guess you could look at them a little bit like AI. They're just looking at the facts. They're really focused on the facts and the Family Law Act, and everything else is irrelevant.
I know someone used to call it slice and dice. You put all the ingredients in, they mix it up, they divide it, or pizza or whatever, a certain way. And to them, all of those facts that you're talking about, they have a factual thing. They don't have an emotional content.
And I do see some people getting themselves stuck, their divorce getting delayed, the property settlement getting delayed, everything getting delayed because they're hyper-focused on, my ex has got a new partner, can't believe what they're doing, look how much money there's a lot that emotionally they just want to get out. They want to go, look how bad my ex is, look what they've done. But the court doesn't care.
Well, the court, one thing you can do, I don't know if there's anyone listening today and they find that the overwhelm from that betrayal is just too much to bear and they can't clear their mind to talk about something else, go and get your computer or get your book or whatever it is you write in and start a chronology of what has happened and get that on paper. And then if you ever need to revisit it, you can. If you're ever tempted to give in or have them back or whatever, you can look at it again. But I think it's like journaling. It gets that out of your mind and then you can focus just on the facts and apply the law. If it's not in the law, the court will say it's not relevant.
Because you get 10 pages, don't you?
You get 10 pages for an interim application. Your affidavit is only 10 pages and then some annexures. And you don't want to waste any of your affidavit material if you've got an interim hearing or even for a final hearing. You don't want to waste the judge's time or your precious space listing out, putting down all of your emotional responses to what has happened or how bad they are, because it's not relevant. So I always suggest to people stick to the Family Law Act, follow the sections. Everything else is peripheral.
What about spousal maintenance? If your ex has a new partner or you've got a new partner, does it change spousal maintenance? Because I've heard of they repartner and they move into a mansion and they're driving a Porsche now. And does that affect spousal maintenance? How much your new partner earns?
The court. Oh, okay. If the new partner earns money, I thought you were going to say if your ex was spending all their money on a new girlfriend for that, does it affect your spousal maintenance? Okay. Yeah. So it sort of doesn't and it sort of does. Okay. The court can take into account the financial circumstances of your residing with someone else. So anyone who's ever put anything into the family court for a property will know the financial statement that you have to fill in. And there's a small section on the top of, I think, page 3 or 4, only a couple of inches, but it says, put the full names, age and income of anyone else who lives in your house, right?
Oh,
okay. And then they say, state any expenses that other people pay for you, and you put the amount, and then put down the amount that you pay for the benefit of others. And those sort of 3 questions, people balk at it. Well, I don't know, but they're there so the court can go, look, you know what? They're living with a multimillionaire. It's nonsense that they've put in their financial statement they're paying half the electricity sort of thing.
Okay.
But it is a bit of a wobbly area, you know.
But it can affect spousal.
Yes, it can.
The last thing about property that I want to touch on is, you know how we talk about contributions before, during and after, and then future needs and current circumstances is the other factor looked at. Can moving in with a bazillionaire affect your future needs and can that affect your property settlement?
That was a very lively area of debate when the Family Law Act first came in. And some judge, I can't remember the name of the case, basically said, well, you're an attractive-looking woman, Mrs. Such and Such. I dare say you'll be married again soon, and reduced her share of the property pool accordingly.
Because she was attractive.
Yes.
And she might marry well.
Hey, you're lucky you weren't around in the
that?
70s, but 78, 79. I know. And I was studying law around then. So we've fought for you girls.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, it seems to be unraveling quite quickly. But so she hadn't even moved in with someone wealthy?
I don't think so. I think she had a potential new No, I don't think she had anybody. I think it was just a thought.
But he just assumed.
So that was
it was an assumption.
smacked down by the appeal court.
Okay, good.
Right.
Okay.
So that was just some logic. So now they're a bit scared to say things like that. But they will want you to demonstrate that you're paying your way with your new partner. If you're not, and, you know, that comes into what your disposable income is. If you're asking for spousal maintenance and you're in a new relationship with the new partner, the court will look at the likelihood that you're actually paying half the electricity or look at proof you have been. And so it kind of comes in. That little set of questions is all that remains of that line of inquiry, and the court can just take it in. It says the circumstances of any new relationship to the extent that it's relevant.
What about if your ex has a new partner who has, I don't know, lots of other future need issues, and they've got new responsibilities. They've got to take care of this new person, and maybe they've got all these future needs and financial responsibilities for their new family, their new partner. Does that affect the property
Usually
settlement?
not. So if you're talking about the new partner, there's jurisprudence to say that your existing relationship, the one that we're dealing with here, is your obligations to your ex-partner are not subsumed by your obligations to a new partner. So it'd be different, I think, if it was like a very long-standing separation and then you pop your head up and they go, well, I've got an obligation to support this person. But because the new relationship, the length of that new relationship usually says what the obligation, like it indicates the obligation.
Okay, so in a nutshell, it doesn't really affect property much.
No, they should have, like if they've got to support you with spousal maintenance because of ill health or the children, then that's a factor. It's on them if they ignore that and try to introduce another person.
Now let's go on to the whole world of children stuff, which is a nightmare.
Yes.
And I'm just going to touch on quickly, and we're going to talk about the rest of it in a minute, but child support.
Yes.
Can your ex moving in with someone super wealthy affect your child support? Say you're paying child support and your ex then moves into a mansion. Does that mean you pay less child support?
No, because you have a legal obligation to support your child. The person that your ex has moved in with, he doesn't have any obligation to support your children.
What about if your ex has more children? Does that affect your child support?
That does affect child support, and they divide the money between the payments between all of the kids and work out a figure between all of the kids. I have to tell you, there was a case probably in the very early 90s where the court was asked to decide whether a person had an obligation to support their stepchildren, right? And because it was in the Act that that was one of the things it had to consider, stepchildren. But the court said, no, not as far as family court goes. Don't go bringing in the stepchildren as a reason not to pay your children's fees, because they don't take priority over the other children. The people who are responsible for your stepchildren's welfare is your partner and the other parent of those stepchildren. And only in the very rarest circumstances would a court find that you had an obligation to support stepchildren, usually if the others are dead.
So it's just the biological parents, just the biological children. So if your ex repartners has more children, then it can affect your child support.
It can.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do you hear of anyone deliberately having children to make their child support less?
Of course. But that's hilarious.
I see these horror stories and you just think that seems like a bad idea.
I feel sorry for the children. You can have a Tarago full. It's not going to make much difference. And the expense of a child is not really less than child support. Goodness me.
I know.
But
anyway,
I hope that's not many people's motives, really.
No, I just see horror stories on TikTok. All right. So next issue. Okay. So we hear this one a heap.
Yeah.
Does your ex having a new partner affect child custody, the family court custody battle stuff?
Ooh.
Does the family court care if your ex has a new partner? Need to start doing your disclosure but have no idea where to start? Feeling overwhelmed about mediation coming up? Or just trying to deal with negotiating with a manipulative ex? Then you need to go to thedivorcecourse.com.au to go to the free resources section where you can get a mediation checklist, a disclosure checklist, a word salad, read a letter like a pro checklist, and also a before you go checklist. Get ahead of the game and be organised and ready, as this handy checklist, along with the accompanying episodes of the podcast, will be perfect for you. All you need to do is go to thedivorcecourse.com.au and go to the free resource section and download the free checklists today. Ooh. Does the family court care if your ex has a new partner?
Yes, they do. They're interested in the children and the people with whom the children are going to be spending time. So the children's issues basically are looking at competing scenarios, a set of how are the kids going to live with this parent, and when the kids are in this parent's home, what's their life like? And then that includes, obviously, looking at the premises where they got their own room, but also having a look at the other people who are likely to be playing a role in the children's lives. So that really matters.
So it's not just new partners, it could be new friends and new groups that
brothers,
join that kids are going to be around.
I've seen brothers where someone has kids, they're on their own, but they reach out a helping hand to someone who's perhaps taking illegal drugs, and that can affect the children that you've got. So the court just wants to look at the circumstances surrounding what their lives are going to be like in different homes.
Does it matter if you repartner with someone who's normal?
Yes.
But they're not a baddie. They don't have addictions.
No.
They're just a new partner. Does the court care then?
The court cares because that's good for the children, that the parent has someone to support them and two people looking over the children. And I've seen cases where I think the new partner is probably the better part of the ex's case, and I know women and mostly women who say, oh, I was worried, but now she's there. I feel everything will be all right. So it's usually seen as a protective factor unless there's something.
So family reports and child impact reports and things like that, do they talk to the new partners?
The child impact, I don't think they do because it's a short form. But the 62G, I think it is, family reports, they do. They want to talk to the partners and get to know them, look at their dynamics with the children. And if the relationship is very new or seems to have a theme of temporary about it, a bit of a smell of maybe it's not going to last, they might not bother, right? But if the person puts this person up as the person that they can see themselves spending the rest of their time with, or at least the children's childhood, then definitely the court wants to look at them. And when the independent children's lawyer is issuing subpoenas, they will include the name of the purported new partner in the subpoenas, so they get in any information that might be held by child safety departments or by the police, just to make sure we're on the right track. And I have seen having a, shall I say, dodgy new partner, the courts can then it's almost an ultimatum. If you continue to live with this partner, we will put the children with the other parent. So, yes, it's very child-focused.
Okay, the other thing we hear a lot of is where the kids are being introduced to new partners.
Multiple.
Like either right off the bat, like second week of breakup, or just constantly new partners. Here's a new partner, here's a new partner. Is that allowed? Is there any rules in the family court about when you're allowed to introduce the kids to new partners, or how many partners you're allowed to introduce the kids to?
No, there's not.
There's no rules?
There's not. Look, it's how you parent, right? So it might be a demonstration of how casually you parent. They may just be dates. It's not up to the other person to dictate because they parent a different way. So the court's quite liberal in those respects.
If you've got an ex who's telling you can't introduce the children to your new boyfriend or girlfriend, you don't have to listen to them.
No, you do you. Where it might come out is in a family report where the children say how they feel about different things. It could come up as a bit of a negative if you've had a succession of different people and the kids are finding it very upsetting. If they say something about that, then that matters. The court doesn't say you can't have any more partners or you've got to limit your partners. But the court may make an order that the children not be introduced to a new partner for the first 3 months of the relationship or something like that.
Have they done that?
Yes, they have.
Really?
Yes.
So there is something you can do.
Yeah.
There is something. So if your ex is constantly exposing your children to new partners and you're just like, come on, this is ridiculous, you can ask the court to make an order that they don't.
Well, I've got to be careful with that. I remember there was a trail there. It had to be excessive. It had to be that the children were affected, and it had to be that the children reported it to the family report writer and that the family report writer makes a suggestion or a recommendation that the children's exposure to new partners be limited in some way. Then, because the court can make any orders they like about the children, they can't stop you having new partners. They only stop your behaviour with the children. So, it's about the introduction.
And I guess this takes us into the coercive control factor and world where you may have an ex who you've left for that reason and they're trying to reach into your life now and still control you. And we do hear of people who are just terrified to get a new partner or to even start any kind of relationship with anyone because they're afraid of how their ex is going to respond. I know of someone who didn't date for 3 years because they were so worried about how their ex would respond. Ironically, after they did start dating, they responded exactly the way they thought they were going to react, even after 3 years.
Yes.
So sometimes delaying the process of that didn't seem to help them in any way anyway. But do you see that coercive control element?
Absolutely.
Can it show up in family court by them asking these kind of things?
A lot of the time it can. And often too, if someone's really offended, if they're coercively controlling, they will put it in their material and they'll be horrified. And be careful with that. You've got to not mix the welfare of the children up with your pain, right? You might be outraged to put anything or much in your affidavit about that. You run the risk of the court looking at it and going, well, that's very controlling of you as well,
So sometimes their own affidavit can be an insight into whether they are controlling.
Yes, and the lovely thing with coercive controlling people is I've always said this, they don't know how to stop. So they'll keep doing it in writing and in their material in the court, and it doesn't take the court long to assess that. You need to be making your decisions as a parent about the impact on the children. Anything else is just nobody's business and except yours.
Okay, but what about those ones that get a new partner and they just dump all the kids' responsibilities onto them? They're like, oh, thank goodness I've got a new partner because I don't want to do the soccer run. I don't want to do school lunches. I'm done with all of that. And they just palm it over. And we hear of these people getting so frustrated. They're like, well, why can't I have more custody with them? Because they're not even spending time with them. They've just palmed them over to a new partner.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, as I said, sometimes that new partner is the best part of the new relationship and the children going over. And it might be that if you can really look at it objectively, it's not a bad thing for the kids. However, it does, if it starts to look like they're just taking the kids off you rather than doing things with them, then that might matter. In the old days, there used to be orders made about first right to babysit the children. You're not allowed to leave them with anyone else, not allowed to leave them with your new partner. But the court softened on that because I think it's the home, it's the environment. Daddy will be there for tea or mummy will be there, still there at lunch when we get back from soccer. That kind of thing makes the children feel more comfortable about the circumstances of their parent. If they were never allowed to stay with the new partner, then they might sort of in their little minds start to draw adverse conclusions about the safety of the new partner. And, you know, these relationships, if you're living together, and I might be old-fashioned, but usually that's a step where you think you might last and stay in a relationship for a long time, and the children are part of that journey.
So what then, can you give me a little rundown list?
Okay.
What does the court consider inappropriate when it comes to new partners? What things, when you say the courts pay attention, what do they go, oh, nah, that's not happening? And what are the things, the little red flags the courts look for?
Little red flags. In children's proceedings now, the court gets a lot of information from the police and from the Department of Children's things. Yep. They get a lot of information before you even walk in the door of the court. The things that they look for that are red flags on an interim basis is any suggestion of child abuse, any criminal history of the person, your partner. That's family violence history is very common in that. And the court on an interim basis might go, look, you know what, in the interests of being like erring on the side of caution, until further order, the children are not to spend time with this person. And they would make an order that if this person is going to be in the mother's home, then the mother is to arrange for the father to have the children for that period of time. So,
what if you're not in court? How do you address, hey, you've shacked up with a bikie?
Yeah.
Like, can you not put my kids anywhere near a bikie? How do you, like, that's an example.
Yeah.
But how do you do it if you're not in court?
Alrighty, so how did you get to this point where they've gone and shacked up with a bikie? They're not going to listen to you, right? They're in love with someone new with their black leather, and they are not going to listen to you, their ex, who they may consider boring or whatever. You have to go to court if you want that stopped. But looks can be deceiving, okay? I don't want to slur bikies here. There's a lot of nice people who ride bikes and wear leather, and they might be like very good fathers or mothers. But yeah, I think if you have genuine concerns, first try and address it in a letter. I think face-to-face is just going to land everyone in trouble because people are just going to go off the deep end. Very respectful email and perhaps more along the lines of, I see you've got a new partner. I'd like to meet him. Or do you know much about him? Or just something, right? And then I'd really feel more comfortable if we were able to talk about this. Something nice. If that didn't work, you should try mediation with them.
Right.
And if that doesn't work, then you'll need to go to court if you want to change things. If the kids are older, sometimes you can teach them strategies for safety. And a classic one used to be the no sunblock on. Kids would come back sunburnt every time. And every Monday morning I'd get phone calls and emails. Little Jimmy's come home sunburnt again. I told her she's got to put sun cream on. Well, one of the best things to do if you're not in court and everything else is not too bad is to teach your children protective measures, right?
Yeah.
But there are times where you don't want to be too afraid to step in and support the children. So if there's something really came up and they tell you something you think, holy cow, that was dangerous. Like, I don't want to give examples, but you will know in your heart what's really scary. Well, if you haven't got a court order, keep them back. don't send them that time. If you have got a court order, go and get some legal advice about whether you have enough grounds to stop the kids going in the short term while you sort it all out.
Because you've got to try to be really careful to not look like the jealous ex or a controlling ex and be making stuff up, I guess. And that is 100% what they're going to say you are doing.
Oh, yes.
If they want to be like, no,
We've
there's
seen
nothing
that,
to see here.
yes.
Everything's totally
Yes.
fine. So but it's a delicate balancing act, I guess, that people just need to be aware of. So really think hard about it. Make sure your emotions are not getting mixed up with the reality. And I guess this takes us on because we're running out of time, Mum. But one of the main questions we get, and this is for property or parenting, whether you've got kids or not, is can you move on? Does it look bad? Does the court care? So if you end up in court for property settlement or custody and you've got a new partner and it's one day later after separation, or you've got a new partner, like, does the court care? Because I do feel like people are worried to date because they're worried they're going to be painted as a floozy.
Oh,
That's
dear.
a word that people use anymore.
Well, I've seen people get engaged the day before a hearing or the day before a family or something. So
how romantic.
She's my fiance now, or he's asked me to marry him. We're going to be a couple. The only of that is it seems that's your intention to stay together for the future, but we all know as family lawyers that might not happen. So the court puts that into the mix. But if it's too obvious, it's hysterical. But you're entitled to live your life post-separation. You know, Laura, can I circle back a bit? Where we were talking about the children and thinking carefully about before you do any of these steps to protect the children. I think a client years ago said to me, I don't say these things. My children say these things, and I am their voice. And she managed to not be invested in the outcome. She just wanted the children to be heard. And when the court said, how can you think this is, that's the way she responded. Yeah.
I'm not thinking this is what my children have told me.
Yes. And I want to know. I want to get to the bottom of it. But in the case, err on the side of court.
Right. So if you are worried about dating, I guess only thing you really need to be worried about is if your partner is a decent person.
Yes. And if you are putting yourself out there on a dating app or, anywhere, have a think about how that would look if it ended up attached to an affidavit before the judge, right? Tone it down a bit. Don't have such awful names. You need to be, when you're thinking about dating, think about that if they're to be long-term, it's to be people who look like they're a reasonable candidate to be a stepfather going forward. But if there's no step-parenting involved or no children involved, you do you. It's fine.
They're not going to put your screenshot of your dating thing in a property settlement, are they?
I can't see that would have any relevance, and I would have thought it should be struck out immediately.
So as long as you're conducting yourself in public and you should be doing it anyway, as a respectable person, then it'll be fine.
Yep.
So let's talk about quickly, let's cover when to document, when to raise concerns, or when to just let it go.
Okay.
So when do they just let it go? What things do we just let go?
If they just do things differently, if your ex and their new partner just do things differently, that doesn't mean that you need to make a fuss about it. If you always have games on Friday nights and they don't, you can't reach into their household and make them do that. So you've got to let them be and be the parent they are. I mean, as long as the children are safe, if they're doing things that you wouldn't do, as they often do, they'll often go off on adventurous things, I don't know, dance classes or whatever. It's up to them. You can't interfere. So let that go.
Okay. And when they started dating, kind of things you have to let go in a way as well.
You do. Look, sometimes people need to put a little sentence in there just to make themselves feel better, but it may bring a string of, no, I wasn't, this is the proof, and you might end up costing yourself a lot more money in the rebutting of it. And it's not one of the factors in Section 79, and it's not one of the factors in the children.
All right, so things to document. What kind of things should they be documenting? The no sunscreen, getting burnt, that kind of thing?
Yeah, but that's just a negligence thing, isn't it? I think it is negligence. It is negligence. I'm sorry. Yes. So I think you would document that you wrote and asked, and that whatever their response is. Some people strip the kids off and get them to turn around and take photos of their sunburnt backs. And then, and I don't doubt for a minute, look what your mother's done to you, or look what your father did to you. And so that's quite traumatic for a child. And the court, when they see the photo, they're going to go, yes, it's a sunburnt kid. What is that child thinking? So let that go. But the messages that you send and their response, because just keep them. One time doesn't mean something, but if there's a deliberate kind of counter-parenting and you're too young to learn to put their own sunscreen on, then you may have to make an issue of it with a letter from the lawyer or maybe mediation.
Okay, so document when you raise concerns. Try not to be one of those parents who's constantly getting into the other co-parent's world. But if there's genuine concerns, document those concerns and document their responses. And it may all seem like a pattern and be a pattern when you go to court, and you can provide all of that information. I guess the other thing, is with medical.
Oh, yes, that's a lot.
So if because I have heard of some families repartnered, like a hippie person who doesn't believe in doctor's intervention, something like that, where they or that kind of thing, that can be really worrying. Or the kid's on ADHD medication and the other parent doesn't believe they've got ADHD medication. So those kind of things, should you be raising that in court as opposed to just documenting?
Because that's relevant to the best interests of the children as well. I shouldn't have been so flippant about the sunscreen thing, but if it's a pattern and you've been writing, then it's the best interests of the child. But also work around it yourself, try and put the sunscreen on before they go, make sure. Yeah. But with these, often find that a person will completely change their personality after separation. They adapt to the new person that they're with, and suddenly they may be at odds over medical. And we had a lot of cases during COVID, arguments about the COVID vaccine. I would have people say to me, but we agreed that they had it last time. These are areas, and you may have to raise it with the court. The court these days is not going to order you to both have parental responsibility and to make decisions together and all that. If one of you goes to court over perhaps whether the child has a diagnosis or not, or whether they should take asthma medication, all of those things, if it's bad enough and you've tried to sort it out and you've tried mediation, if you go to court, what they're going to do is give one parent the responsibility for that. And if they have to cut down the other parent's time to accommodate dosages, they will.
Yes, it matters with kids. Doesn't really matter with property. We're just going to quickly touch on DV. And I've seen people agonize over this question on TikTok. My abusive ex has repartnered. I want to reach out to them and warn them. Is that going to be frowned upon in the family court?
I'm afraid it is. It looks like you're meddling in that case. Different matter if there's children involved.
Right.
If there'd been like of your children by this person.
Okay, and just a reminder, if you feel triggered by this, please call 13 11 14 Lifeline, or you can call 1-800-RESPECT. But so if there's been some sort of abuse with the child, and they've got children, then
yes,
you should.
But it might not be reaching out to the other person. It may be putting a complaint, or not a complaint, but notifying the children's authorities so they can check this out. Okay,
right.
But yes, I don't think any good ever comes of talking to your ex's new partner. I may be wrong, but I always thought that it should be compulsory for the new partner and the old partner to meet and talk over things, because I think some people move on to another victim after victim after victim.
So you're saying it's not a good idea to reach out to them and warn them, because that can be used against you in court. So sadly, that is something that people need to consider.
Yep.
And, it's a problem, I guess, because the more people that are warned, the better. But how many new partners ever believe their partner's ex?
Well,
because, like you said, they're manipulative and controlling. Yep. They'll make up all sorts of stories about the one person to tell the new person.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So they're not going to take anything you say, honestly. But, Laura, I think we've moved a little bit into the realm here of social problems rather than...
Yeah. But it's important. Don't get yourself legally in trouble by...
No.
You don't want a screenshot of a message you've sent to your ex's new partner in an affidavit.
And you don't want to find yourself on the receiving end of a family violence order for the contact, right? So you be very...
And there could be a whole nother episode on weaponized new exes in the family court system, because holy smokes, do we see that happening where the new partner on the scene makes a whole new problem for the people that have left their exes, particularly abusive ones.
Yes.
So, but we'll leave that for another day.
Oh, I'm glad. I'm already depressed.
But what the message out of this is, Mum, is you can repartner.
Yes.
The court's not going to give two hoots for property settlement if you repartner, and they're only going to care if you repartner for family, for children's matters, if your ex is some sort of horrible person.
That's right.
And who's going to date a horrible person?
Oh, well, you did. Not you personally, but our listeners, if they've broken up with someone, often it's because that person is awful, because we don't see it in the first instance. Okay.
Yeah. So go, date, be merry, have fun. Don't play Muppets if it doesn't work. But yes, Mum, what's your question?
You do you. You do you. Gollings and Scott was the case that said that you don't go into suspended animation after separation. They were talking about financially, but in relationships, I mean. But I think it applies in children as well. The best thing that you can give your children is a well-balanced parent in you, and you're entitled to pursue your happiness.
In saying that, though, if you are doing this on your own, you're probably doing a bang-up job anyway, a good job, and your kids only need one good parent.
Yes.
And if that's you, then they're super lucky. And so we're big hugs to anyone who's out there thinking, I'm never going to date ever again. You guys are insane. Why would you even suggest that?
Oh, my gosh. I hear.
But of
course you did. You said it loudly and often.
Yes. So, it is what it is, and everyone comes around at some point, or they may not. There's a lot of people that are quite happy in their homes without another partner, but at least don't let the court hold you back from making that decision.
That's right. And get a prenup if you need one. If you've got a new relationship, don't go through all this again. Make sure you think about a prenuptial agreement.
We have a wonderful episode on protecting yourself after divorce with a new partner, and we talk about that. So I'll put the link for that in the show notes. Let us know if you've had any horror stories. Send us an email. Comment below if you've started dating. We'd love to hear how that's all going. And we will see you again next week. Thank you, Mum, so much for your time today.
No worries, Laura. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review, and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording,